Okay, that seems good. Time to start streaming. Hello! Hi. Hello. How are you doing? Thank you for being here, as always. Time to start streaming. Yay, some questions already. Hello! This stream is related to the Kickstarter, as you know. Not only the Kickstarter, but it's here to answer your questions. At the moment, we almost reached the new stretch goal. Yay, it's like missing 100 euros, this stream 120 related to this one, the official touch will be not only the Kickstarter, but be locked in here to answer your questions. At the moment, we almost reached the not a lot of preparation like for this stream. 100 euros. It's here for your questions. This one, the official touch. Sounds looping. Not only the Kickstarter, but be locked in here to answer your questions. There you go. It should be good now. Okay, that should be good. Forgot to uncheck something. Every time X happens. Okay, so there were some questions. Just give me a moment to get back to the top of the stream. So Scott says he's here to learn how to make a fully procedural generated 3D world, but with graphics like The Witcher instead of Minecraft. Yeah, okay, that should be good. Let's do that. We have a few questions. So now we're good to go. This stream is for you. It's for your questions. There's not a lot of preparation for it. So yeah, I just had the stream audio was going through the desktop channel. So we had a few questions. Starting with, let me read. What can I start doing right now that will help me when this Godot tutorial releases? Should I take a look at Godot 2? I'm going to take them in reverse order. So one it's very interesting. What can you do right now if you are waiting for a tutorial, if you want to get into Godot or something like that would be useful. First, looking at Godot 2 is absolutely a good idea. The engine is not going to change. Okay, I'll get back to you, Aiken, in a moment. Looking at Godot 2 is a good idea because the engine is going to be the same. I mean, the interface is changing. Some of the way you're going to write the code, some things are going to get simpler, but essentially the interface is the same. It's just better. The scripting is the same. It's just better. The functions you're going to call are the same. They are just a bit better. And the 3D part might be different. The workflow, the process, but nothing that you can't jump on, when Godot 3 comes out. So the best thing you can do is get started making games with Godot. Then, I'd say, learn the programming fundamentals. It's a thing that many of us in the community seem to miss. There are professional developers around here, so they're not really concerned with that, not as much. But there's a professional tutor who teaches Godot, Lars, and he advised me, he looked at my code and gave me very good advice in that. Godot embraces object-oriented programming to the very core. If you look at it, when you make your scene tree, it's some kind of scene hierarchy. You're going to add children. You're inside of a scene. For example, if I take a player, I define it very much like I would do in object-oriented programming. I have a player, and it contains some visualization script and a sprite. The idea is to use this tree as a declarative language to get a good sense of what the game is about, what the scene is about. So learning about object-oriented programming is a very good idea. Even if you look at the scenes, you can create inherited scenes just like you could inherit from a class. There's a tutorial from PigDev. He's in the channel. I think I'm the only one who can share links, but he made one. Yeah. Is it pronounced Godot or Godot? So in French, it's Godot. In English, people might say Godot because of the word dot. But the name of the play, Waiting for Godot, is Waiting for Godot, like that. And then if you pronounce it in with a bit more of an English accent, it becomes Godot. And if you want, you can call it Godot. There's no official pronunciation. What's the ETA for Godot 3.0? Let's get that out of the way. It's this summer. There's no... I think Omicron says October 10th, but I think it's when it's done, as soon as possible. And that's about it. When it's stable and all. Next question. Maybe I can get doing a bit of art in the background. It'll be a bit more interesting. Oh, I have to switch screens, actually, to do that. Yeah, I'm very smart. I've been very smart with that. Let me see. Magic. And I'll just push that on the other screen. Everything else... where's the chat? Now I lost the chat. There you go. Is it worth doing Python tutorials to get good with GDScript? Yes. Yes, it is for some of the concepts of, how can I say, the syntax, the way you write Python, like the idea of Pythonic code. As Godot has a similar syntax, you can apply these same principles you'll learn to create clear code. These are things like, let me grab the engine. A few things I learned from Python, for example, that are generally useful in development. It's, for instance, when you write a condition, instead of writing if something, then do something, you write the opposite. If you want to check if something is true, let me check. In this project, it's a bit hard to show. Let's say if, let's say you want to check that the character is of a certain type, like that. And then you do a bunch of operations. Instead, Python invites you to write it that way. If the type of the player, or rather, if the type of the player is not equal to player, then you return, you leave the function. And that way you don't have to indent blocks following up. You can just write your code like normal. Is there a shortcut to indent every line selected while we're in the code editor? Yes, there is. It's Alt-right, Alt-left. Okay, there are lots of questions. This stream is going to be running for 1 hour approximately because I've got more work to do, and then I have to head back to my hometown and vote today. Yeah, Aiken is saying that the idea of the returning like that, writing conditions that way to avoid nesting blocks is a good practice in C and C++ too. I'd say the good thing with Python is that there are a lot of resources like these. Like there's a whole guide on how to write clear and simple code. And all that you can use in GDScript. On top of that, I'd say for the there's going to be a Python implementation inside of Godot that might be useful for example, when you want to write tools for the engine. It's Python has very good built-in libraries, right? So that can be interesting to check out. So regarding the Kickstarter, what kind of time frame do you think you'll have for completing everything? Because there are lots of stretch goals. I'd expect roughly 1 year, like until June 2018, maybe July, right now. Yes, Godot is coming up. Please, people, tell people who are joining the stream now when Godot 3 is coming out, because this question is going to come back often, I think. Okay, let's do a bit of art on this side while I read some more questions. Hold on, I have to. It's hard to keep everything on the screen. There you go. So, going back through the list of questions. Let me put a picture in there because it's actually hard to focus at the same time as you're talking about something else. How profitable would it be in the long run for someone just starting out in game development, since the market is so saturated? It's hard to get started in general. There's a lot to say about that. You can expect any creative business venture takes about 3 years before you start to get profitable. That's the rule of thumb, if you want. So whether it's a YouTube channel, a website, some creative website, some handcrafted stuff that you want to sell, or making games or photography, count about 3 years of very dedicated work, considering, and that is true only if you have already a professional skill level. All right. There was a question about how do you keep motivated or keep doing game creation. That's a big one as well. I think a problem that many of us have. For me, I don't do a lot of game creation. Like, I do stuff for the purpose of the tutorials, but I don't get to create games from start to finish anymore. Now, making videos, you have to be motivated every day because it's time-consuming, it can be tiresome, and it's part of the job is really not creative at all. So, grab that. Okay. So the thing with that, I think being part of the community is very important, and having an audience, in a sense, like people like you can see you are quite a few on the stream, in the chat. There are lots of people I know as well. So this keeps you going. Then there are things like, for me, when you are making money, for instance, you are forced to finish the job. At least it works that way for me. It's not the case for everyone, but I have to live up to people's expectations. So it's a matter of ethics. I use that to keep going. Then I'd say it's hard. It's different for everyone. Some people procrastinate. I've been a big procrastinator when I was younger. And I've built up that thing. I've tricked myself into doing things, how can I say? Tricked myself into staying productive. And now it's become a habit, it's become natural. I'd say making very small projects, bite-sized projects that you share, like things that are not necessarily games, but components of games that you can share every day, so you get some feedback on them, or every week. That's a good way to keep going And as you build up, that habit of getting things done, you'll get more and more comfortable with that. And there was a questions, may I suggest some books, resources about game design? Okay, so as far as game design is concerned, the main thing I'd say is, what is it called in English? It's the book from Jesse Schell, The Art of Game Design. There you go. Let me grab, does he have, yeah, he has a website. There you go. So it's one of the Bibles of game design itself. It's about game design, not video game design, but about making games in general. And it applies to video games a lot. But that man has made plenty of these. He's worked in theme parks. Is that how it's called in English? You get the idea. Aside from that, resources for art, there's Control Paint. It's one of the main resources I share all the time, so you can find the links in the chat right now. And that would be the main two out of my mind. There are plenty of others, like the Game Programming Patterns book. I'm going through it right now, and it's invaluable. But you need to have a good understanding of object-oriented programming first. Have you noticed any features you would describe at least very useful missing from Godot that are present in other engines, ideas you have used? Yeah, plenty. Necessarily everything you find in a fully fledged code editor. Let me grab a piece of GDScript. Like, I use Visual Studio Code a lot, and I've been trying out the Vim implementation, or the Vim emulation rather. And let me get a script. Let's grab this. What are you? Yeah, okay. Should be a small script. There you go. So there are things I'm missing, like the ability to do that, to wrap bits of code in the code editor, for instance. You can wrap, unwrap everything. So when you wrap everything, you can see clearly what functions you have in your code, navigate them very easily. That way you can unfold anything, anytime. There are plenty of small things. The biggest thing for me, the one I use the most, is the ability to create multiple cursors and to edit things, like to quickly select multiple instances of something. Or the ability to rename something with just the one key press. Plenty of small things like these, the Git integration as well. And that's what I use to update the open source examples. Right there, can share the link. You have some open source examples from the videos. There are things regarding animation, everything. Now, the thing is, every single tool has its advantages and its drawbacks. Godot has a lot of advantages. One being everything integrated as part of the core program. The fact that you can do animation and all that stuff, you don't have to go outside. Even tilesets. The tileset implementation is a bit dated, but it's still very good to have, right? I should really put some picture or something in that document, because as I'm talking, it just looks empty and crappy. All right, I can't drag and drop in this version. Okay. So this program is Krita, by the way. It's an open source program I use for game art. And it's open source. It's very good. It's a painting program first and foremost, but it's really nice. One question, how do you change the default IDE to VS Code? You don't. You can load the scripts in a separate editor. If you go to the settings, editor settings in the top right corner, you can find it's in I don't remember, but it's somewhere. If someone can remind me where it is. I can't remember, but it's there somewhere. So you can give a path to the editor you want to use, the text editor. And when you double click a script in the engine, it will open in your external editor. I don't use that though, because you can always, whenever I change something in a script, so I have to open that one in VS Code. Let me that. Okay, let's go. Hold on. This one should be in final. I think it's the isometric example. So I can open the folder in code, like the entire workspace. I have it right there. I put it next to Godot. So let me grab the player script. Is it this one? Yes, it's this one. So say I change something to 800. Whoops, I hadn't saved. Say I change any value, I'll change the max speed. Upon saving, you'll see it refresh inside of Godot instantly. So you don't have to change the default editor. There are very good things in the built-in editor, like the auto-completion is more powerful than what you get by default in third-party editors. And okay, so the setting to set your scripts to open in a separate editor is editor settings, external editor, thank you Omicron. And it's, you change the exec path and check the use external editor. Okay, plenty of questions. I think there were some. I'm making a rhythm game. What's the value used to store the position of the sound currently played? I'm not sure I get the question. Really not sure I get it. I haven't used the sound system in Godot too much. Haven't covered it in depth because it's changing completely in version 3. So can't help on that one. Which topics are already scheduled for the course, like animation with Godot, GUI, etc. So if we look at the Kickstarter page, there it is. Normally there are a few listed down there. I don't remember exactly. Yeah, I think they're listed in the pledges. So the funding level is a lot higher than what was planned before, and there were a few things like covering basically the character's movement, combat mechanics, meaning some AI, some monsters as well, so creating 2 types of character entities, interactions with the environment, could be dialogues. The plan was not to make dialogues, but now it's an option. Some programming fundamentals, some user interface as well, creating the game's main menu, accessing the game, the save game as well. Covering the game design workflow, how to prototype the game, starting with ugly graphics in a sense. So yeah, that was the plan. Then there's that gauge here that's at level 15 right now. These will add extra topics to the course. Each topic, based on complexity, might eat 1 or 2 points of that gauge. And these are vote-based, so I can't tell what's going to be in there. I have a few ideas. There's things like intro to marketing. There was the plenty of things talking about the shaders, focusing a bit more on animation, going a bit further with screen sizes, for example. All sorts of things like these that require a lot of extra work to put into the course. So you can expect 20 to 30 themes to be available to pick from, and the most voted ones will be the ones we'll pick. So next one, is the animation bone-based or sprite sheet? You have both. We create anims. Let's see. Do I have the project loaded? Normally I should have one. You have both, so you can create animated sprites anytime. Down there under Node 2D. And then you have the animation player. When I load, not the player, the ghost, please. There we go. If you check the ghost, it's animated using keyframes. You can animate every single parameter. And you have fake bones for now. You don't have a real skeletal system just yet that would zero out the character's transform. That's coming for Godot 3.1. I can post the link. Hold on. I'll share the link to Godot Engine, Discord. Yeah, in the community tab on the Godot Engine website, you have a few places to go ask questions, get help. The most active one in live is the Discord one. The question and answers website is quite good. You can find a lot of answers there already. You just have to search in the search bar. And there's Facebook and Reddit too, but it's a bit harder to get answers to your questions, I'd say. Simply because there are some other topics that tend to stick to the top because they are a bit more popular. When you ask questions, you don't get as much visibility as someone sharing a new classy picture of the editor or tutorials and all. How is tile animation done when interacting with a player? I'd have to check on there are no animated tiles in the tile set implementation. When you create a new tile map, I don't have any in this project. Hold on. Let me go back here. However, from the code, let's check. Tile map object. You can modify the cell. Where is it? You can set, you have the cells, set cell function down there that allows you to change the tile, the current image. So you'd have to animate that via code. When the player walks on a tile or something, you can get the tile the player is on with the world to map function. Where is it? World to map, right there. So that will return the current cell, the grid cell the character is on, and then you can set this style in the code. Oh, there are questions I don't really have answers to, like how does Godot interface with Android or iOS native features? I know that the Android support is quite good, the Android interaction. But I'm not sure about exactly what the feature set then there. And the integration for iOS, however, is a bit... I read that it's not as great. Yellow is asking, is there another Discord for the Kickstarter backers? Yeah, it's coming after the Kickstarter. The reason being that people can cancel their pledges, and it's quite common during a Kickstarter. It's actually the overall count goes up, but plenty of persons change their mind. And because of that, I want everything to be settled. On top of that, I don't have as much time right now for individual support and request, as there's videos to make every day. So yeah. Should I start the tutorials now or wait for the full new Kickstarter tutorial? Start now, clearly. Yeah, there's no reason not to start. It's going to be the same thing, just a bit better. All right. Are there less questions? Let me check. Anything did I miss anything? There was a question about installing FFmpeg for Krita, but you have to check in the docs. The step-by-step process is explained. There was a question, what is the best game engine to learn Python, BG, PyCharm, or the closest to Python, learn GDScript? Really, I'd say just learn Python. You can use the language itself to create tools for your own workflow, your computer and all. I use plenty of these, like for the videos, for example. I use a tool to generate, hold on, where is it? There we go. I have tools like wrapped in the command line files, and these allow you to make, for example, proxies for the videos, so I can edit them in Blender next. Yeah, so Python is very useful, and then you can jump on GDScript anytime. No need to go through a Python-based game engine, really. A nice question. This one will be quite useful. Let me bring up this thing. Was before launch. What features of Godot 3 do you consider the most significant improvements over Godot 2.1? There are plenty of things in Godot 3. The ones on a very personal level, the one change I like the most is this one. It's the new editor. Really, the current one, if you have a very large screen, it's okay, but there's a lot of space that's being eaten up by everything. And when you're looking at your game right there, like that, this is an HD screen you are watching, and there's not that much space for the game. In the new version of the editor, it's a bit cleaner. You have less margins and all that stuff. It's a lot better. It resizes better as well. It's a bit more, how do we say? Yeah, it adapts to the screen resolution and the size better than the previous one. Using Blender as a video editor would be a good Kickstarter for next year. Yeah, maybe. Why not? Actually, I'm going to give a hand to the developers with the Python plugins, because I've been working on mine for a long time. Considered selling it at some point, and yeah, it'd be better to put it out open source. So it's a tool. Can show you real quick. Yeah, I have some tool to make quick cuts to render the video. So can hold on. How did I call it? Like I can render the video for the web. It's going to set the parameters and export it for YouTube. It names it automatically, and you end up with that video. You can see in the folder right there. Plenty of functions like these to save time, because Blender is very powerful for video editing. It's just lacking several features to really allow you to edit quite fast. So coming back to new features in Godot 3, there are plenty. The new audio engine seems quite interesting. The ability to set everything with a mixer, it's quite convenient. visual script will appeal to a lot of people, I think. But then there's just the new particles that are very useful for both 2D and 3D. And yeah, the new 3D engine in general, it has plenty of new features, plenty of improvements. On a personal level, again, I prefer really everything that's related to UX. I don't mind having too many new features, but having improvements that for the things that you do all the time, like for scripting, the fact that you won't get node the same way, that it'll be a bit more convenient, the ability to access variable also directly. Right now, you know that in order to get a character's position, for example, you're going to call the getPosition function, and instead you'll be able to just write position that way to get the parameter directly. Can asks, may you suggest some books, resources about game designing? I did that moments ago. Don't know if you were there. So there's The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell. That's really one of the best ones. And then I don't read too many books. I use plenty of resources online. The main one I use is Stack Exchange, I'd say, where you have lots of questions, lots of answers. Reddit as well. More things like these. Yeah. On YouTube, obviously, you have, how is it called? Extra credits. Let me check. So yeah, the Extra Credits channel, if you don't know it, it's very good. It talks more about the game industry in general nowadays than specific game design tricks. And there's Mark Brown, definitely one to check. I prefer everything that's visual in nature because of the animation, of the motion that you have in games. And then there's the GDC Vault that you should check out because you have a wealth of resources from people giving talks at the Game Developers Conference. And on the YouTube channel, everything is free. While on the GDC Vault website, you have free stuff, but it's quite limited. So this is one to check as well. Forgot to mention it. Nope. GDC Vault free content. And if I recall correctly, on the GDC Vault, hey, oh, okay. You can search the emoji, yeah, actually. Interesting. You can find talks from industry professionals for the past few years. And from the current year, you have a few free talks as well. What sort of assignments should we expect in the Kickstarter course? Learning games like Tetris or Super Mario, or something more broad-minded and creative? Yeah, it's the latter. As far as assignments are concerned, expect them to be related to the last lessons we've seen. This means, let's say we talk about finite state machines, something that will be in the course. So we've implemented the very base of a character. I present the finite state machine pattern, and you can find the final source code after the lesson that you could use and base your work on. But there'll also likely be an assignment that will invite you to redesign your character, the motion, what you have implemented so far, to use the FSM pattern. Things like these. Basically exercises to apply the tutorials, and my goal is to get you to make a game as well as you are following along, but not to make the same game. That's the thing. That's why I say this tutorial, this course is not for absolute beginners, because it's my intention is to help you become more independent, right? Any other questions? Whoa, the interface is starting to get messy. Too many things. Right. This and that. We should be good. In the meantime, I'm gonna make a bit of art. Until the next one. The idea was to make this character the rabbit, to adapt it to a Zelda style. Let's see. Maybe a bit of white would be better. Note that for the tutorial, the art will be available as well. Like even the source files if you want. I don't know if anyone would want that, but they'll be available. One thing that should be more interesting is having the hold on, I need to hook on the window. Okay, perfect. Where can I find small game ideas? That's tricky. I'd say your best bet would be to Google it. That's how I would do it. There was one with I don't remember the name, but there was a very good one. Now that BigDev mentions it, that man shared game ideas like he made 100 or something, but things that are very creative. Sorry, Alex. The question is, do you work on code or artwork first on a game project? Everything at once. The first thing you should do is you get the initial idea, you find something that you want to do, and you prototype it. So you get some kind of minimal viable product you want. So at first you don't do the art. If I'm working alone, I would start with blocks and all and try to make the game fun with very basic visuals. And yeah, then you once it works, you start to refine the graphics, and then you tear it down and you plan a bit better and start over. And basically that's the idea. Most of the time that's how it is. Will there be any tutorials on integrating APIs? Probably not. Probably not. The reason for that is I don't have any idea for a universal API to implement. That would be a bit tricky, to content everyone with that. And every API, you implement it in a different way. So yeah, I would definitely, for game prototyping, I would definitely use placeholder characters. And placeholders, like either if I have a sprite or a drawing I made on paper or something like that, I might use that. However, yeah, I could use something like that basically. If I make the character, could use something like that. A quick drawing. I know I want the character to be a rabbit. Something super simple, just to get the proportions. In the game engine, in the game, it doesn't really look like a rabbit, but that's okay. It's more like mice. So yeah, in the game engine, I would scale it like, I don't care about the visuals really at that point for prototyping. I might just scale it that way or squash it or change its scale, whatever. How much input lag should I expect from Godot? 0, I guess. Maybe Aiken can answer that better if he's around, or some developer. But yeah, I mean, if you want to know really, benchmark it. That's the only way to see that, and benchmark it on the target platform as well. Because on desktop, you shouldn't have any trouble. On mobiles, then I don't really know. I haven't tested it, so yeah. Will you cover the process of exporting the game assets from Krita to the Godot game engine? I'm interested in determining the dimensions of the assets for a mobile and console project. You have a video about that, about sprite dimensions on the channel. Basically, you want to use 2 times the final sprite's resolution. And regarding the export, I can't really say. Right now, exporting from Krita is not super efficient. You don't have too many tools, so we have to wait for Krita 4 for Python scripting to see what our options are then. Because right now, really, I use Photoshop for exports. Basically, Photoshop can export everything based on the name and do that in a continuous fashion. You can set the different image types based on the image and all. In Krita, you can export all the layers. Normally, you can save the groups. Where is it? I think it's save group layers, something like that, and it's going to batch export everything to image. But you have to do it manually every time. I'm drawing with a tablet, also, to answer another question. How do you plan a budget and the win? How do you plan a budget for a small project? Okay, for that, we have to grab some kind of text editor. The rule of thumb is a game budget. It's cost plus hours times wage. That's it. You want to estimate the time it will take you to create the game. For that, it's really hard. Per team member, you have to make a more or less detailed list of everything you'd have to do. And you have to go down to things like characters. I need 20 sprites. One sprite is going to be, let's say, 30 minutes of work. Okay, so I'll have 20 times 30. That's how many hours? Please help me. That's 10 hours. Okay, so for the characters, I have 10 hours of work times, let's say, the actual cost of running a company can be really high. But let's say you are just starting out and you're going to have a micro status. You're not going to have a company, really. Maybe you'll need $30 per hour. You will still pay taxes, so you have to be very wary of that. And so you estimate the cost that way. In practice, on a small game, you generally don't earn enough money to make up for your budget. But that's not a problem as long as you can live. In a sense, you're just getting started. But it's interesting to keep that in mind. Like when I make a course, I do that. For example, I do list the videos I'm going to make. I know that one video can take, let's say, 6 hours on average. Okay, especially for a course. When you have more structure, you have to do a lot of research. So one video, 6 hours. For the Kickstarter, there might be, as part of the Kickstarter, let's say 100 videos. So 600 hours. The thing is, there's a lot of communication, of support, of pre-production to do before that. So roughly on a project like this one, I'm expecting, to give you an idea, 1,800 hours on the project. Then there are the contributions that are going to take some time as well. You can expect 300 hours, something like that. And yeah, you're looking at a lot of work. Add events to that, other things that take time away from production work that I'm going to do. Like we're invited in at the Capitole du Libre in France in November. We're probably going to go and give some conferences there, so that's Often something like that, you go for 1 weekend and you lose 4 days of work. There are plenty of things like these that are very important to your success, but that take time away from production. So when you take everything in account, you multiply it by the hourly wage and you get an idea of the cost. And then you have to get the cost, but also the actual money you need, like the minimal amount of money you need to see through the day. Hopefully that helps. That's the idea. You break down all the costs, but it goes a lot further than that. Like the cost, for example, the cost for me for GDQuest for the year so far, with the rent and everything, it's going to range between 4,000 and 7,000 euros. Give you an idea. That's commuting to work. That's hardware, software licenses, anything. If something breaks, for example, you have one. I can take care of my computer by myself. So if one element is dead, I can just replace it. But even then, I've had two, how do you call that? The power units. I've got 2 that died in the past. So every time it's 100 euros, something like that. You have to take everything in account. And the reason you want to do that is because there are always extra costs that you won't have planned. That's the big problem, is it's always going to, pretty much always going to cost more than you might expect. How do you manage? Hold on. Plenty of things. Come on. I can't follow along. I should have some screensaver for the next time, because I don't have anything interesting to show you at the same time. We should be 2 persons, one working on something like drawing, the other one talking. Except I'm alone, so. Okay. I use Sprite sheets in which every body part are disassembled. Should I pre-assemble them or use some kind of animation tool? You use Godot. You can animate them in Godot. You just throw in the sprites separately, and you can do cutout animation. That's what you have. In this project, I don't have multiple body parts for the characters because it was part of a game jam. So I had to stay quick. But for example, you have 2 sprites here. As you can imagine, you can use as many body parts as you want and animate them. What are the advantages and weaknesses of hiring someone full-time and paying a freelance for assets and coding? The advantage is reliability. You're paying someone, so the chances are they'll do their work. If you're paying a professional, you take your time to hire the right person, you'll have good work. It's hard to say. It costs a lot of money, that's it. And you have to be very careful with who you hire. But then, yeah, nothing, there's not so much I could say about that. It depends a lot on the project. Basically, you hire someone to answer a need when you have the money. So until then, there's no real advantage because you can't afford someone. How do you manage to assemble a team? If you don't have money, getting a game dev team, like, or as a hobby, is extremely hard. You can't imagine how hard it is for not to find someone to get something started with, but find someone to make a full game with whom it's going well and all. It's very, very excuse me, so some very interesting question. I'll say it right after that. But yeah, it's very hard. I'd say participate in game jams like the Ludum Dare or something like that, and find partners there. It's only 2-day events in general, or 3 days. Try to find local game jams too. It works better. But that way, if it doesn't work out, it's not a big deal. You're having fun. That's how I'd recommend it. Did I learn C# or Python or C++ for this? Learn GDScript, the built-in language. It's very simple, and when C# ships, you can take a look at it and see what are the pros and cons. But until then, use what's available. And if you want something that's close and that's useful outside of Godot for plenty of things, learn Python. It's a programming language you can use to make changes on your computer. You can create tools with it. So it's a good one to use. And it's simple compared to, I'd say it's simple enough to write and there are answers to all your questions. Does the Kickstarter course have a target platform? Yes, it's going to be desktop games. I think that some people want to do mobile, but mobile would be a lot less interesting as part of that course for the majority of people. Especially because there are lots of hobbyists around and not necessarily people who like mobile games that much. Well, if you're a mobile user, it's a lot easier to like desktop platforms too. There's a question on the Kickstarter page. Now, when we are reaching 24,000, so you have a stretch goal there. Can you explain in more detail what the official tutorial means? That's the next stretch goal on the Kickstarter. Yeah, we are reaching it tonight probably. And this one was decided with the developers, with Remy and Juan. Not really with Juan. I don't remember if I think we discussed it with Juan too. But basically, when we reached that mark right there, I'm committing to reworking the official tutorial in the docs because it needs a complete upgrade for Godot 3 and it needs to be improved. So that's this section. It's the step-by-step section, and it's a lot of work. As you can see, it's already a good dozen of tutorials, and I'll have to basically redo most of it and maybe add some things along the way too. So it's going to be text-based as before, and we'll see if we add extra videos or not. That's not sure yet. Maybe some video snippets when it makes sense. But yeah, there was a question from Hendrik. Is Macron the politician named after the cookie, or is it the cookie named after the politician? Yeah, pretty good one. Yeah, if you have any other questions about the official tutorial, I can't say a lot more just yet because everything related to improvements to the documentation we are going to discuss with the entire development team, with the contributors, in an open discussion, probably on IRC, when Godot 3 is closer to release. Would you recommend a place for new developers to learn different kinds of copyright? For example, don't know if I used a GPL license audio sample, would I get in trouble? Okay, so learning about licenses. I'd say let's check. I think if you search for open source licenses, you should have some website to convert them on opensource.org. Do they have them all? Yeah, there you go. On the open source website, you can find the most common ones. Godot uses MIT. They don't have GPL. Yeah, it's GPL is general public license. The idea of GPL is that you must redistribute the sources, and you can't lock the stuff you are doing. You grab something released under the MIT license, you can then turn it into a proprietary project, in a sense. You can resell it and all that stuff. Yeah, there are also the Creative Commons license for art and music. They are a lot more common. You'll want to read up on that. Where are the licenses? Let me check. Yeah, the most common one is probably this one. You can find the link in the chat. What's a good strategy for funding? How did you know you were ready for Kickstarter? Any ideas of how to keep things afloat when life kicks you in the shins 24/7? For games or tutorials? Okay, let's talk for a moment about funding in general or crowdfunding. That's really not the same thing. Finding money or running a crowdfunding campaign is one very specific approach to finding funds. How do you know you're ready? You know you are ready when you worked on it for about 6 months. I think Aiken can confirm that, but I think the first time we discussed it, even though it was briefly, was back in 2016. I think that's the first time I brought it up, but I was already working on it, and the idea for the Godot Kickstarter came from a discussion with David Revoy, the guy who does the Pepper and Carrot webcomic with Krita, and he recommended that. He was like, you should show how to make a game from scratch with only open source tools, and yeah, with Krita and Godot. So roughly a Kickstarter takes, I'd say, at least for this one took at least 30 days of work to prepare. And then there are a bit more than 30 days of work during the campaign. If you add up everything, so I'm including, for example, going to the FOSDEM and the Godot convention, more importantly, because I went there to give a hand, but also to meet people, to get feedback and all. You have to include all that, and yeah, it takes a lot of time. I'd say you know you are ready when you've measured it. Basically, before the campaign, come on, I can show you the figures if you want. So there's nothing to hide here. I just have to check where it is. I think that's the one. Should be the report. No, these are the requests. Where is it? Hold on, I just don't know where I put the data, but basically there were promises from people. People said massively, yeah, we're okay to put money on the Kickstarter. And I used some data. Hold on, maybe if I open Excel, I can find it for you. Where did I put? Ah, come on, it's important. It's interesting on top of that. Maybe it's right there. As we're in the middle of the Kickstarter, it's a bit hard. Normally, it was in the before launch. Yeah, you can see how much of a mess this is. Okay, I see. Yeah, the stats were in a separate sheet. So just from the form, from the community, people like said overall that they donate about 8,500. 470% said they would support the Kickstarter. 426 mentioned the amount they would put. The average pledge that people would give was 20.9 euros. And I have some statistics right there that I use to design the pledge levels. Basically, the first quartile was at 10 euros, so that's why I decided to put the first pledge at 10 euros, the first level. And that was interesting because I wanted to know if basically people would be ready to pledge enough. I could give them the course back for that. That's something I wanted to do. So because the first quartile was at that level, I could say, okay, we're going to give a full course for 10 euros. So that's cheap enough for people living in some countries where things cost a lot more, where they don't make that much money. So that's that. And yeah, there's a lot of thought that goes into everything and a lot of feedback. Remy has looked at everything in the campaign. And the first version of this campaign page, for example, was a wall of text. Yeah, if you have any more specific questions, don't hesitate to ask. Yeah, thanks, Martin. I noticed that. I mean, I have everyone is helping a lot. Like every single person who put something onto it is helping a lot. But thank you personally for going high. How do I make a custom file type to store assets and stuff in my game? There's nothing to file types have nothing special. It's just, let's say I have a bit of text and I have some data in there. I can save it as no extension. Test dot. What was your extension? TTA. And you just have to load. You just load the file like normal and you pass the data. There's nothing like the file extension is just here for the file system more so than anything else. You can open any file and it could contain pretty much any type of data. It's sure that if you save something as JPEG and you put some text inside of it, you're not going to see a picture in the end. However, you can open that bit of text with a text editor and modify it. Right? TTA is not an extension that contains text. Let's save it as MP3 and see what happens. No problem. This is an MP3 file. This is an MP3 file now. What do I think about Construct? I worked with it professionally, even like. Basically, we had a game studio with someone, and we made games a few years ago. We made HTML5 games for mobile browsers, and it made sense to use Construct because the games were super small. Let me see. I think normally these are the kinds of things. This is a prototype I made to get clients for like freelancing jobs. A very small one. It's made in Construct, and I can say it's stiff as hell. Like, the thing is, it's very cool to prototype games, to organize your code and let your game grow as you have more ideas and all. It's hell, in all honesty. And that's one of those types of programs have those limitations. If you don't want to do code, you can't use complex programming patterns and all. It's going to break at some point. How much do you think the course will be after the Kickstarter? So the price, I said it'd be at least twice the price. So 20, 40, and 80. Then we'll see with the stretch content. It depends a lot whether everything goes into it, or if we split it up in another course, the pricing might change. Next question. What features, plugins do you miss in Godot? Nothing really. I'm looking forward to the new animation system for 3.1 because the current one is not really animator friendly, I'd say. It's good for game designers and all that stuff. It's missing something to zero out the pose. Basically, you don't have the typical animator workflow you'd find in something like Blender, for example. So if you go in Blender, you have a full graph editor for one. So that's planned for version 3.1. You have plenty of small things that in time, like we'll see with what's exactly going to happen with the animation editor, but the fact you can't really move the cursor outside the top element. There are lots of small things like these that slow you down when you are working. You don't have shortcuts by default when the animation pane is up, so you have to set them up by hand, and these eat up a bit of your time. You don't have an auto key feature. It's missing like crazy. You don't want to insert keys by hand every time. So plenty of things. Which one do I personally like in Godot? Which features? I'd say the strong hierarchy of things, like the fact that it's very flexible, but at the same time you have very strong standards as far as how things work. It's object-oriented from the bottom up. So basically, if you follow the paradigms that you learn, at least most of the object-oriented paradigm, you can apply it to Godot, to the interface, and to the way you structure scenes and all, and it works. That I like. The things like scene and script syncing, and the fact that things you change at runtime are saved. That's quite useful too. The tool mode, where you can run game code in the editor, it's excellent. That's really good. Yeah, as far as the missing features, I'd say I'm looking to see this one, like the remote inspector is very useful. But every time you launch the game, you have to go back there, open the remote inspector, wait for it to activate. You have to unfold things, get to the node you want to inspect, then go down the values. It's not always very convenient because it's squashed in the interface. You can't move it. Now, things like these are minor, really. But as I said earlier, everything that's related to UX, I'm very sensible to. What should I've... there's a comment from Ark saying, you probably should have made this a video. I just need to know what this, like the features, I have that presentation about Godot that I gave in a game dev meetup, and I'm going to make it in video probably in the next few days. It could be useful for newcomers, you know, but also to talk about what's coming in Godot 3 exactly. When are you going to talk about shaders? Yes, it is planned. I'm super tired. You don't see my face right now because I'm not shaved. I have to cut my hair, and my eyes are half closed all the time. So basically, I'm working every day I'm waking up between 6 and 6:30, and I'm going to bed at 11 p.m. basically. And the stream is going to end soon because I have to go vote. So I have to commute back home. Yeah. Let's say 15 more minutes so we can answer a few more questions. If I need a feature from Godot 3, should I start working on it now with the alpha or wait until it's ready? Wait until it's ready, clearly. Never work with alpha programs. that can break or change or everything. Make the game in Godot 2. Make whatever you can in Godot 2. You most likely don't really need, like, there are plenty of things for which you won't need the new features. For example, if you're waiting for the PBR workflow, you can still create the game logic, debugging tools, unit tests, the core gameplay, and you will have the converter. It's already in, I think, in tools. Yeah, there's the export to Godot option that will be there to convert your current project to Godot 3. You'll have probably some fixes to make, but you'll have most of the way there. And until then, your project will be stable. Haven't slept for 2 days straight. Yeah, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't do that. But I think I say like skipping a night can be okay. I've been working for 45 days straight now, not taking a day off, and that is really bad for you. I can tell you, don't do that, people. I have to, because that's just, I mean, if the Kickstarter is a success, it's thanks to you, thanks to everyone, definitely. But it's also because there was a lot of work put into it. Not just my work, but the reviews, the feedback and all. And this, those 45 days of work straight allowed me to, I put a product out, I finished the previous Kickstarter project, and all that stuff. For a Flappy Bird style game, you definitely don't need Godot 3, I can tell you. So that's probably something that the way you designed your scenes and all might need some fixes. But yeah, it's typically a very simple type of game you can do with pretty much every engine, any engine. Yeah. Hold on. How does someone start out managing time? Yeah, I missed that question. Managing time. How to get started with that? That's a good question. You have to measure everything you do. And you have to measure every time you, for example, if I fire up the Discord channel right now, it's going to open right there. Every time you open up Facebook, anything that's not the task at hand, you write it down. You put a cut. You want to keep a book of everything you do for at least a few days, a few weeks. You don't have to do it every single day, but you want to do that exercise where you look at what you do and how you are doing it and measure the time everything takes, basically. You're working on a script instead of, I'd say, that's how I do it for tutorials. Let's say, let me open the tutorial topics. To do, there we go. So here's a list of, this is my to-do list. Let's say for the next tutorials, there are some notes in this, right? And every line is not a task, actually. Let's say I'm going to, I want to make a save game example, because that was requested a few times, and there was a comment about that yesterday as well. I'm going to let's say, so that save game example, I'm going to do a bit of research in the docs. So it turns out there's actually an example in the documentation. That's quite good. So saving games, I'm going to check that out, read a bit on that, and then I'll make a guess. Most of the time I'll be like, okay, this is not too complex, there's nothing new I have to learn. I'm going to do X, Y, Z in the tutorial. I'll write this down, and from that I'll make an educated guess about how long it's going to take. And then I'll measure the time I spend on every task. I'll look at it. I'll be like, let's say I have to code the example. But before I code the example, I have to design the icons and assets for the project. Can I reuse something there and all that stuff? I'll ask a few questions. So I'll split up the task. And for each one of these, I'll focus on it, do it from start to finish, and measure how much time it took, right? And once you're done with everything, you compare to your guess, and you improve it over time that way. Plenty of questions. A path animation like CSS motion path module, is it possible? Let me check the CSS motion path. Is it just the tweening, or not sure? I haven't seen that yet. In all honesty, is it something new? Because I only use currently usable features in CSS. Okay, so you can design curves and all. Yeah, you have a curve. Is it curve node? I think. Yeah, you have path follow 2D, for example, to follow a path, to make an object follow a path, and path 2D as well. So you can design splines that way. Let me check. I think you have to draw. Okay, you have to make a path 2D, then a path follow 2D. Basically, you can draw a curve in the editor and make objects follow it. Is there a good website to find artists to hire or work with? So first, yes, there is one. It's ArtStation. That's where the professionals... Hey, ArtStation. That's where you'll find plenty of professionals. So when you're looking to hire someone, this is probably the place to go, because you have portfolios, basically. And you want to judge people on that, then message them, get their rates. But you will easily find reliable artists there. Next question. Which tools would you suggest to make sprite sheets into small pieces of animation? I'm not sure about the question, Mehmet. Is that how you pronounce your name? Anyway, if you mean making animations, you'll have to pick, I don't know, Krita is good for traditional animation, so you can go with that. Otherwise, you would want to animate in Godot. If you want to split a grid-based texture into several sprites, I haven't done that in a long time. There was that program, Shoebox, that offers some tools. It's based on Adobe Air, so I'm not sure. I don't remember if it's available on Linux, but at least it's a good tool for Windows users. Is there something like org mode for VS Code? I don't know what that is. What is org mode? Since spatial and 2D sample nodes are gone, do you have any idea of how we will handle these effects with buses? Honestly, no, because I haven't tried the new system yet, and I haven't tried the samples either. So what that is, the spatial node. There'll certainly be similar functionality, but Sample nodes. You'll probably have you'll still probably have nodes and have the same functionality as before. Using the idea with buses is that you send the audio signal from one channel to the next. You route the audio through different, we call them buses, but essentially channels. Or the idea is you can apply effects on some bits of the audio, but then you can branch the audio and you can regroup it and apply. For instance, let's say you want to apply some reverb to all the sounds in the room, but only on some you want to add some compression. So you'll route these to the compression channel, and then you'll route everything from the compression channel and all the other sounds to a new channel where you'll apply your reverb or a new bus. I just started with Godot. Is Python really the closest language? Yes, it is. If it's for cutting sprite sheets, yeah, you can use GIMP. I'm completely new to game design, more interested in art. I've decided to use Krita, Shoebox, Godot. Where should I start? Good question. There's there's a lot to say about that one. Start with the tutorials on the channel. So for Krita, there's a full course, and for Godot, there are tutorials as well. It's very hard to say because it depends on every single person. I'll leave you a link to the tutorial page on the website, so that way you can find them all. You have this free Krita tutorial for game artists that will run you through all the basics, using the program for the most part. And yeah, then you have some Godot tutorials at the top. In your most recent tutorial, you use GDScript to draw a line of sight directly opposed to creating a new 2D node. Is this a normal pattern in Godot? No, not necessarily. It's just Godot is flexible, so you can do things however you want. I want to have some robust debug tools and visual debugging tools for the tutorials. So I just experimented with that. Let's see, which one was it? There's this one, and yeah, the field of view. In that example, everything is drawn using functions. Whoa, few errors there. So yeah, you're talking about that example, I guess. The lines are drawn with a function. That's it. That uses the draw method in Godot. So you have the code down there. And if I'm using that, it's because I can easily extend the length of the vector. It's drawn dynamically, the color is dynamic and all that stuff. I could certainly use some of the UI nodes, and I'll do it in the future, but I've used that function a little bit before, and as I have to make tutorials every single day, I tend to stick to things that are not too far from what I know already. How much would you promote your games on forums or GameJolt? It's good to be active at least on one forum and message people on, update the thread every few weeks or every month, something like that. But I'd rather stick to social media. That's a matter of preference. Some people will tell you have to be everywhere. When you are getting started, it's true. And until you have some following, you do have to be a bit everywhere. For promotion, for example, Ark is saying you'd better send review copies to websites instead of spamming forums. And if you have an excellent game you spent a year on, that might make sense, but it's very, very, very hard. Like for indies, it's hard to even get a single article. So often, actually, forums are better to get visibility. Can you give us any hints on the release process of a game? Like, for example, embargo dates, how to deal with post-release bugs, releasing in multiple platforms. Hard to answer that because I haven't done multi-platform games. I think, yeah, we made games for iOS, Android, plus web portals, but there was not too much work involved in that for us because it was HTML5. I'd advise against releasing on many platforms at the same time, but it's better to focus on one platform, do it right, and then port the game. Because otherwise, yeah, unless you have experience and you are sure that it's going to work, but otherwise, when it's your first time, it's a lot of extra work. Dealing with post-release bugs, there's nothing special about that. You fix them as fast as you can, just the way you fix everything as you're making the game. And the release schedule for the patches is up to you. If you have a good export system, you can release a patch every week if you want. With something like Steam, it will, like, the update process will be automated, so that's okay. When should you start with posting on forums? When should you start your communication? I'd say as soon as you have something to show, something good, because talking about your idea, no one will read, no one cares. Very few people care if you want. Showcasing a very basic prototype, same thing. People are not interested in it. You want to respect people's time, so only show something when you have something decent to show. I'd say once you're done with the minimum viable product, for example, and then you want to communicate, like give updates throughout the game production every single week at least. And it's better if it's like, if you're going professional with it, every single day is better. That said, yeah, it's 5:30. Do you have any advice about version control? In general, it's hard to say. It's a topic to learn of its own. I'd say Visual Studio Code is very good with it. Like, everything is integrated. I really don't like using the console for Git. I think a visual tool is a lot more powerful. So let's say I add some comment here in Visual Studio Code. I can, like, I get to see every change I made. I can click on any script to see what I changed exactly. I added this line, for example, here. I can revert the change. I can stage it. Commit anytime by clicking this icon up there or pressing Control-Enter. It's very convenient, so I'd recommend using something like that. How feasible is it to make art with just a mouse? Use vector drawing programs, so use Inkscape, something like that. Painting with a mouse, it's not completely impossible, but I've only seen one artist do it well so far, and he would only do landscapes. And he was a very good painter and everything already, so he had a lot of experience with art. Okay, that said, I've got to go. Today we have to vote for the how do we say, the assembly, I guess. I saw somewhere that you can do everything in Godot using C++. How do you do that? it's not really advised. You can extend the engine with modules. I'd recommend you have to search for modules in the documentation. You will find a guide for that, but it's nothing very easy. You'd better wait for Godot 3 and not GDScript, GD native. Yeah. So thank you for being here, everyone. Have a good night, and see you tomorrow in the next video. It's ready already. I might skip one video maybe on Tuesday because I'll be very busy, and yeah, I have a lot to do. But I'll do the 30 videos for the challenge. Like, it might end on June 23rd instead of June 22. Nice. Yeah, because I'm getting really tired, and I think a day off. It won't even be a day off because basically I'm giving a conference on Tuesday, and there'll be a lot of people coming around here. I won't be able to work like normal, and yeah, I'm already short on time, so I'll likely do that. Is it possible, one last question, is it possible to write a class on GDScript and extend it? No, not directly. Yes, it's possible to write a script, and then you can extend it by writing something like that. You write extend, hold on, get an example. You have extends node here. Instead, you can extend a resource from the engine. I don't remember if I think you have to put quotes around it, but then you can go to myscript.gd and it's going to extend that class, because every script is a class in itself. All right, but you cannot define a class down here, like nested inside your script, and use that to with the extend button. The reason for that is when you write a class with the class keyword, it's nested inside another class. I think that's the syntax, or is it? I think that's how you write it, right? So when you write a class inside of another, it's basically a subclass. So you can't extend it, but yeah. To answer the question, yes, you can extend other scripts. Okay, have a good evening, good night, good day, whenever and wherever you are. That's Benjamin's phrase. And thank you for joining. See you tomorrow for the next video. Bye-bye. Hold on, I'm saying that, but I don't have the page ready to shut the stream down. Okay, shutting it down. Bye-bye. See ya.